Hi guys, today I'm going to be walking you through your no red ink practice over vague pronouns. So if you have not already done so, I need you to open up the attachment that is in today's warm-up in Schoology. Put that in Notability. You'll be using that to follow along to fill in notes and to answer practice questions. So today we are looking at vague pronouns, and your quiz over vague pronouns will be on Friday. So you have about a week to prepare for this quiz. So a vague pronoun occurs when a pronoun could refer to more than one antecedent. A pronoun is a word that replaces a noun in a sentence, such as he, she, him, they, that, all of those. An antecedent is a noun to which the pronoun could refer. For example, if we look at the sentence, Marcus arrived late because traffic held him up. Him is our pronoun because it's replacing a noun. Marcus is our antecedent because Marcus is what him in this sentence refers to. So first we will look at avoiding the vague pronoun you. So people often use the word you when they mean to refer to themselves. For example, someone might say, Henry was so excited you could hear it in his voice. Well, they don't actually mean you, they mean I. What they meant to say was Henry was so excited I could hear it in his voice. When not referring directly to the listener, use a more specific noun or pronoun instead of you. An incorrect sentence would be, when Dave worked at the zoo, you could smell him a mile away. Well, they're not talking directly to the listener. What they should have said is, when Dave worked at the zoo, the guests could smell him a mile away. This tells us who is smelling Dave. Another incorrect example would be, after staying up all night, I realized that you really need sleep. Again, they're not talking directly to the listener. They should have said, after staying up all night, I realized that I really need sleep. Lastly, our incorrect sentence would be, Ricky and I drove around the block and you couldn't park anywhere. Again, they're not talking to the listener. So they should say, Ricky and I drove around the block and we couldn't park anywhere. Let's look at an example. So it says, choose the best version of this sentence. 1, Lewis and I wanted to take surfing lessons, but you couldn't get to the beach through all the traffic. Or 2, Lewis and I wanted to take surfing lessons, but couldn't get to the beach through all the traffic. Take a moment, circle which sentence you believe is correct. You should have circled number 2. Lewis and I wanted to take surfing lessons, but couldn't get to the beach through all the traffic. I did not choose number 1 because it uses the vague pronoun you, whenever the writer was not actually talking to the listener. We'll try again. Choose the best version of the sentence. Number 1, Alice reached the mountain's peak and could see Disneyland in the distance. Number 2, Alice reached the mountain's peak and you could see Disneyland in the distance. Take a moment, circle the correct answer. You should have circled number 1. Alice reached the mountain's peak and could see Disneyland in the distance. Again, I did not choose number 2 because it's using the vague pronoun you when they are not intending to talk to the listener. Let's try one more time. Choose the best version of the sentence. Number 1, when one visits the store tomorrow, pick up Oliver Wood's eye drops. Number 2, when you visit the store tomorrow, pick up Oliver Wood's eye drops. Take a moment and circle the correct answer. You should have circled number 2. When you visit the store tomorrow, pick up Oliver Wood's eye drops. In this situation, the writer is talking directly to the listener. They are telling the listener or the reader to do something specific. So in this case, it is appropriate to use the pronoun you. Use the pronoun you when talking directly to the reader or listener. For example, the parade is about to start, so you should get the float ready. In that case, again, it is appropriate to use the clear pronoun you. Only use one when talking about situations that are very broad or hypothetical, meaning that they may happen but haven't actually happened. For example, during the safety speech, Lori advised that one should never go hiking alone. In this case, one is a clear pronoun because it's a very broad or hypothetical situation. We'll move on now to identifying antecedents of a vague pronoun. If it's unclear which noun a pronoun refers to, the pronoun is vague. For example, when Dave ran into Chris, he was carrying a pie. He is a vague pronoun because we don't know if he is referring to Dave or to Chris. It needs to be more specific. In the next example, the pronoun is clear because he can only refer to Dave. When Dave ran into Amanda, he was carrying a pie. In this case, he is clear because it can only refer to Dave because he is the only male noun in this sentence. Let's look at an example. The directions say that the bold word is vague. Which words could it refer to? The sentence says, Mr. Filch tracked mud everywhere when he left his camping gear in my attic. I found that pretty annoying. So we are looking at the bold word that. On your document, you are going to circle which things that could refer to. Take a moment and circle. You should have circled tracked mud everywhere and left his camping gear in my attic. I chose both of those things because he could find either one of those annoying. And we don't know if the reader is talking about Mr. Filch tracking mud everywhere or if he's talking about the fact that he left his camping gear in my attic. That is not specific enough for us to know what the writer is talking about. Let's try again. Hermione Granger left her wallet on the train. It could be 50 miles away by now. So if we're looking at the word it, circle all the words that it could refer to. You should have chosen her wallet and the train. We don't know if the reader is saying that her wallet could be 50 miles away or if the train is 50 miles away. The word it needs to be more specific so we know which of those things the reader is talking about. Next, we'll move on to identifying vague pronouns. First, we'll look at identifying the vague pronoun it. If it's unclear which noun a pronoun refers to, the pronoun is vague. Some writers attempt to solve this problem by repeating words, but this can make writing sound less interesting and sophisticated. The best solution is to phrase ideas in a way that avoids vague pronouns and repetition. Here's an example of a vague sentence. Sue told a joke and breakdanced. It was amazing. It is too vague because we don't know if the writer is talking about the joke or the breakdancing. Next, we'll look at an example that is repetitive. Sue told a joke and breakdanced. Her dancing was amazing. While it is specific and it's not vague, the word dancing and danced is too repetitive, and we want to choose a new word. This last example is a clear sentence, a clear pronoun that is also not repetitive. Sue told a joke and breakdanced. Her moves were amazing. This is clear because we clearly know that she is talking about breakdancing without repeating the word dance over and over and over. So we are going to look at this sentence, and our question is, are any pronouns in this sentence vague? Sarah came out of the submarine and crawled into her tent. That was a very small space to spend time in. Take a moment and circle a vague pronoun if you see one. You should have chosen the word that. That is too vague because we don't know if the writer is talking about the submarine being a small space or the tent being a small space. It needs to be more specific. We'll look at another example. Are any pronouns in this sentence vague? When Elizabeth first met my father, she made fun of his bow tie. If you see a vague pronoun, circle it. You did not need to circle anything. All of the pronouns in this sentence are clear because Elizabeth is going to be the only she, and the father is going to be the only his. So in this case, all of the pronouns are clear. Now let's look at correcting pronouns with no antecedent. Vague pronouns, such as unclear antecedents. Pronouns must refer to an exact noun, also called an antecedent. There must be a 100% match between the pronoun and the antecedent it refers to. For example, when he was 10, Dave won a prize for his novel. The pronoun he and the antecedent Dave match, so we are good. Next example, when he was 10, Dave's novel won a prize. In this case, the antecedent and the pronoun do not match because he and Dave's do not match. Lastly, when Dave was 10, his novel won a prize. In this case, our pronoun his and the antecedent Dave do match, so it is correct. So now, still thinking about correcting pronouns with no antecedent, select the correct form of the sentence below. Number 1, when Zazu sang happy birthday, his audience was amazed by his beautiful voice. Number 2, when he sang happy birthday, Zazu's audience was amazed by his beautiful voice. Take a moment and circle the correct sentence. You should have circled number 1. When Zazu sang happy birthday, his audience was amazed by his beautiful voice. In this case, Zazu and his match. Again, select the correct form of the sentence below. Number 1, because he didn't hear the timer, Draco Malfoy's lasagna started to burn. Or number 2, because Draco Malfoy didn't hear the timer, his lasagna started to burn. Circle the correct sentence. You should have circled number 2. Because Draco Malfoy didn't hear the timer, his lasagna started to burn. Because Draco Malfoy and his match. However, number 1, he and Draco Malfoy's do not match. Now, we are going to correct pronouns with multiple antecedents. So the directions say to make this passage as clear as possible without reusing any words. So number 1 says, Ron Weasley wore his pajamas inside out last night. His wearing them inside out must be why he had a bad day today. Or number 2, Ron Weasley wore his pajamas inside out last night. That must be why he had a bad day. Circle the correct answer. You should have circled number 2. Ron Weasley wore his pajamas inside out last night. That must be why he had a bad day. In this case, that is clear because it could only refer to him wearing his pajamas inside out last night. Number 1 is too repetitive, so we don't want to choose number 1. Again, make this passage as clear as possible without reusing any words. Number 1, Mr. Gibbons watched a scary movie and drank a coffee before going to bed. That made it hard for him to fall asleep. Or number 2, Mr. Gibbons watched a scary movie and drank a coffee before going to bed. The caffeine made it hard for him to fall asleep. Circle the correct answer. You should have circled number 2. Mr. Gibbons watched a scary movie and drank a coffee before going to bed. The caffeine made it hard for him to sleep. Number 1 could not be correct because that could have referred to watching the scary movie or drinking the coffee. So we needed it to be more specific to tell us which part of the sentence made it hard for Mr. Gibbons to fall asleep. Now you are going to spend about 10 minutes practicing vague pronouns in No Writing. So you'll go to nowriting.com, click on Practice Vague Pronouns, and work through some of those practice questions. This No Writing practice is due on Thursday, April 8th by 11:59 p.m.